You're watching PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hey everybody, welcome to PIX on Politics Daily. I'm Dan Mannarino. It is Wednesday, March 4th. And just so you know, there was an interview that we did with Mayor Zoran Mamdani that is now posted on pix11.com. And we talked to him a lot about his big announcement this week of those 2,000 seats for the first batch of 2K care seats that are going to be in certain neighborhoods. He was targeting low-income neighborhoods, right? So we had about a 6-minute conversation about why those neighborhoods, what comes next, the funding for it all. The interview is now posted on pix11.com. This week, though, there was a big decision, right, that came down from the Supreme Court, and it had to do with redistricting. And there was a big fight between Nicole Malliotakis, who did not want her district to be redrawn. If it was going to be redrawn, it would have moved, say, Dan Goldman, who was running in New York 10, over to run against Nicole Malliotakis, but that was struck down. So Dan Goldman is now facing two opponents. He's facing Brad Lander and Nickie Kane for Congress in New York 10. So he's trying to hold on to his seat. We've spoken to all the candidates here. We got Nickie here joining me now to talk more about this. So great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So first and foremost, let me get your thoughts on redistricting overall, right? Because it seems to be the big topic right now. Democrats want to redistrict because Republicans already did it. Are you in favor of it?
I'm in favor of it, but I think this timing of this redistricting is just completely wrong. I actually signed on to the case. I was a part of the case, and I requested that it be stayed because it would just cause confusion at the last minute. This was filed in 2025, and this was a last-minute decision. People would have been confused on the day of voting, and when people get confused, as I said on my social media, people get discouraged from voting, and that's the last thing we want.
So you're in favor of mid-cycle redistricting, meaning not a census year, because it makes sense in a census year when you reevaluate the numbers, but this seems to be the point of contention of whether or not to do it before the census.
Not necessarily, just not 30 days before we start petitioning.
Okay.
That was the issue.
Okay. So now you're going up against Dan Goldman and Brad Lander. Let me ask you first and foremost why you decided that this was a seat you wanted to run for.
I actually just ran for city council, so New York 10 is part of that city council district. So I figured since I already have some face value in that race, I should just extend myself to the New York congressional race. Also, I feel like...
but what gives you the qualification if you lost the race for council?
I do not have qualifications in politics, but I do have human resources experience, banking experience, advertising experience, and a multitude of experience. And I think at the end of the day, we need someone who has experience with real world New Yorkers deal with, like managing a budget. You know, my opponent's one is the heir to Levi Strauss, $250 million worth. The other one is very wealthy himself. These two individuals don't know what it is like to manage a daily budget.
Well, Brad Lander was the comptroller for the city of New York.
Yeah, and he did a very poor job of it. He tanked the investments of our city retirees. You know, Brad Lander's not an average New Yorker who's worrying about rent, groceries, or deciding if they should buy their medication or rent. We need somebody who knows how to live on a budget, who has real world experience of what our people are voting for. And I don't believe these two individuals have that experience. What
do you think, you ran for council, you live in the district, right? What are you hearing from the constituents in New York 10 that would be the biggest issues that you would want to tackle on day one?
People are tired of surviving, Dan. People want to live. They don't want to have to worry about food, groceries, and rent. They want to be able to live a life. You know, I think, in my opinion, my definition of poverty should be 3 meals a day, a roof over your head, clothes on your back, and at least one vacation a year. You know, nobody should have to scrape around every day while we have billionaires and millionaires flying to Mars or space.
So what would the solution be to an affordability agenda, right? How would you tackle that if you were a member of Congress and get bipartisan support to support an affordability agenda?
I believe we need more real world people in Congress, not people like my opponent, Dan Goldman, who's the 6th richest person in Congress. We need to tax the rich and tax the billionaires. You know, I'm not sure if the average person knows of this policy where the wealthy use a buy, borrow, die, which basically just defers taxes to their, passing along wealth to their heirs. Every penny needs to be taxed. No one making less than $750 should be paying more than someone as a billionaire. And I believe it's time that wealthy people pay their fair share of taxes, and I think that is part of the solution to this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, taxing the wealthy is a big part of what Zoran Mamdani is trying to do right now in terms of paying for some of his agenda. So you support the fact, would you support Albany raising taxes on the wealthy and the corporate tax rate?
When I announced my candidacy for Congress, I said I wanted to bring all these progressive policies that Mayor Mamdani ran on to Congress and made it on a national level. So I definitely support a lot of his policies, plus more of that.
What kind of Democrat, there's a lot of talk about the Democratic Party as a whole and where people kind of fall on the spectrum of Democrat. What kind of Democrat are you?
I consider myself, I would say my policies fall under like capitalism with training wheels. I believe we should give people the opportunity to reach as far as they can in life, but we shouldn't let people fall flat on their face. Like we're allowing people with disabilities right now not having food, not having health insurance. So I would consider myself maybe right of left and left of center. So somewhere in between there,
Okay. So you support a capitalist agenda, but you also support
not letting people fall flat on their face.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand because capitalism versus what Zoran Mamdani is proposing are totally different things.
Not necessarily. I think we should.
He's a socialist.
I mean, socialism, as I said, my policy is more capitalism without training wheels. That's what I called myself. I believe we should give people the opportunities to rise above, and there should be a basic level of dignity for people.
Okay. Obviously, affordability is one big issue that's playing out in real time right now, but obviously ICE is a big issue as well across the country from what we saw play out in Minneapolis and here in New York City as well. Do you think ICE should be abolished?
I think ICE in its concept that it exists right now should be abolished. I think we should remove people who are a violent threat to our Americans, but this is a big political stunt, political theater. I mean, Obama administrations deported more people than any president, and we didn't have any of these theatrics about it. I think we should limit the way ICE is conducting itself right now, with the masking, the violence, the just walking up to people up in the street, having citizens arrested. I think we should have more targeted and more judicial oversight. So no more of these administrative warrants. Absolutely not. I would oppose that to my last breath.
Yeah, I mean, getting rid, what you said, of criminals, worst of the worst, is kind of what the agenda was, and then it kind of wasn't what it was. So people who are here illegally, you just think they deserve a path to citizenship.
Well, we have to ask ourselves, what happens when somebody comes here undocumented versus documented? They go through an inspection process, and they are checked for safety reasons.
Yeah.
But then we have someone who's been here undocumented for 10 years. Isn't that enough time to say, well, maybe this person is not a threat? That's what I'm having a conflict with, And
they get a path to citizenship.
Yes.
Yeah. And so kind of looking at how this is all playing out, it seems to be that New York has a target on its back because it's a sanctuary city. And there's this larger talk now of whether or not other areas of New York State should be sanctuary. Do you believe New York City should keep its sanctuary status?
I believe we should protect our citizens and our residents. I believe we should respect our immigration laws, but we shouldn't be brutalizing people on our streets and targeting people based on their race and ethnicity.
So keep the sanctuary status.
Yes.
Right.
But I believe we could work a little bit more with the feds when it comes to someone that should be in custody,
Worst of the worst criminal. Okay.
Yes.
As you kind of look at the landscape of the race, right, you are relatively unknown.
Yes.
And so how do you kind of go up against two big names who have a lot of money to spend, and your war chest is, no offense, relatively small. So how do you kind of break through that noise to make yourself known in a race like this?
Well, being somebody with little means makes you very resourceful. And I have a background in web design and online advertising search engines. So I'm very good with digital advertising. So I've been getting my face out with that. Also, when I ran for city council both times, I didn't make it on the ballot one time, but I collected every signature personally. So I have that face value also in the Park Slope area, District 39.
Do you think that you'll be on the ballot this time?
Yes, because petitioning hasn't finished yet. So,
right. So do you anticipate you'll get the necessary signatures.
Yes.
Okay, that is one of many conversations we'll have along the way. But thank you for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, and I didn't reference your dog that's here, but your
This
dog
is
is here with you
Lucas
along.
Noah.
Yes. Okay. Hello, Lucas Noah. Thank you very much for coming in. All right, everybody. Don't forget, we're gonna have. You can watch that interview with Zohran Mamdani on our website, pix11.com, and then this Friday on Pix and Politics, we're going one-on-one. Who do we have this Friday, guys? Who do we have? We have the school's chancellor to talk about the 2K announcement. So we're talking one-on-one with the school's chancellor and Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis, since she just won the redistricting fight. That's all this Friday on Pix and Politics. But in the meantime, have a great day.